arena tonight, and Coulter tells you why people hate her. The brother of the former Israeli Prime Minister explains why the Arab Spring could be a nuclear winter. And once gay, always gay? Hello and good evening. You have entered the arena. I'm Michael Coren and thank you for joining me. Well, it's a week now, so I suppose we can be bold about Jack Layton's death without being accused of being worse than Hitler. Actually, no, forget that. There's always time for the thoughtless, the hysterical, the hard left and the soft-minded to scream that someone is worse than Hitler. Look, Jack was a friend of mine. I liked him. He did me favors. I responded. Good guy, but well, not a perfect one. He could be aggressive. He was often wrong. He would have been a terrible leader of this country. And he was a professional politician. But he also cared about Canada. He cared about the poor and about the homeless. And unlike some politicians, he wasn't a snob or a swine. I'm sad he's gone. I'm sad for his family. But for goodness sake, it's not about the death of Jack Layton, it's about the death of perspective. It's not about the death of one man, it's about the death of proportion, dignity, respect, death of a sense of balance, the death of genuine grief. If you weep and moan about the death of a politician you never knew, how did you or will you react to the death of a parent, a spouse, or, God forbid, your child? As Gilbert and Sullivan had it, if everybody's somebody, then no one's anybody. If we go into fits of grief for everybody, we care for no one. Nor is it just about a Canadian politician, a police officer who dies, a child who is murdered, and on a more obscene level, a pop star who finally succumbs to addiction and self-indulgence. And I suppose, the death of a generally well-meaning but monstrously pampered princess. Oh, Diana was like a daughter to me. No, she wasn't. Your daughter is like a daughter to you, but she's probably off having another tattoo or piercing or getting drunk and jumping in bed with yet another guy who says he loves her. We remove God, we remove religion from our society and then congratulate ourselves on how mature we are and then replace the deity with false idols because spiritual nature abhors a vacuum and we're spiritual whether we like it or admit it or not. In the same week that Jack Layton passed away, PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, launched some sort of pornography website to expose how puppies and kittens are denied human rights or some such garbage, not allowed freedom of religion or the right to vote. Think about this. In a risible effort to argue that animals are not just meat, and we all know that, darling, a bunch of over-made-up dunderheads wave their boobs about, belittle themselves for desperate men, and behave like, well, yeah, like pieces of meat. As I say, the death of perspective. In Britain last year, a group of homeowners complained there was a bad smell coming from the house in between their two properties. The police were called, and they found that the stink was of a decomposing body. The next-door neighbor of these two families had been dead for a week, and nobody knew. They didn't know because they didn't care. I wonder if they then wept for a famous person they had never met. Oh, come on. We have developed social indifference into an art form and only pretend to care when told to do so by a millionaire at a rock concert or by social media. Hatred and hypocrisy are more common than love and liking. Look at how National Post columnist Christy Blatchford was treated when she dared to question some of the inflated responses to the Layton death. She was threatened, abused, insulted, called the most vile things. All this hatred in the name of love. I care so much for Jack Layton, they said, that if you disagree, I'll kill you, you effing bitch. Rest in peace, Jack, but also rest in peace the dignity of private and genuine grief and a sense of what really matters. Ann Coulter was on the show yesterday, and due to public demand, we had more than 14 million people. Well, I made that number up, but a lot of people said bring her back. So, of course, I said, well, bring her back. And here she is with her new book, Demonic, How the Liberal Mob is Endangering America. Ann Coulter, welcome back to you. Now, I've met you, I've interviewed you, I really enjoy you as a person. I know you to be incredibly likable. I know anecdotes about you, you've been so humble and forgiving to people, but your reputation is rather contrary to that, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Why?
I think it is described in my book, another tendency about groupthink and mob behavior, and how an individual man who is perfectly reasonable and intelligent on his own, when in the grip of a crowd, changes and becomes immature and loses some of his intelligence. That's part of what has always baffled me about liberals. You know, I see them on TV, and I know some of them must have done well on their board scores because they went to good colleges, and yet they seem so stupid on TV. Well, a man in the grip of a crowd does change, and one of the characteristics of being seized by groupthink is a tendency to demonize one's enemies. And it certainly is not just me. I mean, the blind hatred for George Bush, and I don't even like George Bush that much. We weren't defending him the way they were attacking him. It was stunning. I mean, there were movies made about fake documentaries fantasizing the assassination of George Bush. He was called, in mainstream newspapers, the Washington Post and the New York Times, compared to Osama bin Laden, of course, constantly to a Nazi, called the devil by Pulitzer Prize-winning William Raspberry. These are respectable journalists who lose their minds when facing a Republican who, did what? The war in Iraq? They're that upset about it? Are they that upset about Libya? No one even knows what the point is of Libya. But there is a tendency to way exaggerate and demonize one's opponents. On the left, not so much on the right.
Well, I would agree with you today. I think that this is true. But isn't that a fairly recent development? It wasn't that long ago when it seemed to be the left were more the victims of this diatribe.
Were they? You could be right. In my lifetime, it has always been heavily demonization. And I mean, beyond the facts of the case, I don't think Republicans were demonizing Bill Clinton. We were citing facts about him.
Well, he was described as a murderer, wasn't he? His wife was described as a promiscuous lesbian. It's not exactly friendly, cuddly language.
Not by... Look, I write for Ronald Reagan's favorite newspaper, Human Events. That's as conservative as it gets. We didn't call him a murderer. We didn't call her a lesbian. I am citing journalists writing in the Washington Post. Yeah, Anthony Lewis in the New York Times compares George Bush to Osama bin Laden. I mean, in a country of 320 million people, there are going to be some nutty people. One of my friends was recently complaining to me, a conservative, that I used sort of risque language. It was a line from Demonic, I think. Something about Bill Clinton, and you should see him dry hump a waitress at an elevator. It was a relevant point. In any event, I said, look, I'm making jokes about true facts. If I just come out and scientifically describe to you what Bill Clinton was doing in the Oval Office with interns or in a hotel room with Juanita Broderick, that is going to be vulgar. And I think that is the worst you could say about not even mainstream, but nobody calls Human Events mainstream. We're the far right wing. We weren't calling Clinton a murderer.
The issue of censorship, because a lot of this, look, I don't particularly care as long as everyone is allowed to speak their mind. But of course, what has happened is, if you're on the left, from the center left to the hard left, somehow you are dignified or you're legitimate. If you're the center to hard right, then you're on the edge. You're an extremist, whatever the context. And increasingly in North America and Europe, you're being silenced. You've been a victim of that, so have I, to a lesser extent.
Yes, it's an interesting fact how, you know, the communist, the one on the farthest left, agrees with no one to his right. The socialist will say, well, the communist has some good points, but I don't agree with anyone to my right. The, you know, mid-level European half socialism will say, well, the socialist is right, the communist is right, but these people in the middle who want a parliamentary system and more freedom, they are completely right. People will always say those to the left of them, well, that's okay, but to the right, no friends to the right, no enemies to the left. And you see it even among wherever you are on the spectrum.
I wish I had more time, but let me plug the book. I mean, that's why you're here, for goodness sake. Demonic, How the Liberal Mob is Endangering America, available from all good bookstores and quite a few bad ones as well. And Coulter, thank you so very much indeed.
Thank you. Great to talk to you, Michael.
Coming up in the arena, being gay doesn't mean being happy. Our midweek rumble between a Labour leader and a right-wing Tory, and the decline of Arab journalism. Okay. Every week this one is planned for. Of course, if it doesn't work, you'll never see it again. That's TV for you. Midweek Rumbles, the working title of this. So we have two people representing left and right. I know that's very unlike Canadian TV. Normally it's the mushy centre, just moving to the left a bit. We've got two people who I think are articulate, eloquent spokespeople. Is that the correct term? For their causes, and friends of mine. Over here is David Menzies, who's a conservative. I think that's a compliment. He's a broadcaster, man about town, former magazine editor, and so on. How are you, David?
I'm great, Michael.
Don't really care, actually. I just being perfunctory. And Sid Ryan, who is... Are you chairman or president of the OFL?
I'm president.
President of the Ontario Federation of Labour. You were head of QP Ontario, enormous public service union. You've run for the NDP. You're a stalwart of the left.
I am. Okay.
You are.
I'll take your word for it, Michael.
Not a laughing matter. Jack Layton's funeral. Now, you know, Jack. We were probably on the show, on my old show together, the two of us, with you. I like Jack. I'm sorry he's gone, but I've got to say, Sid, I found the funeral to be enormously over the top. I found this hagiography about him to be ridiculous. I wonder if he even would have wanted all this.
Actually, he planned it, meticulously planned it, actually. So everything that happened at that funeral, basically Jack had sat down with his wife, Olivia, Brent Hawkes, the minister, and also some advisors. So yeah, I mean, everything from his letter to the music, he picked the music, everything that unfolded, the messaging that he had, which I thought was quite brilliant, actually. And
Stephen Lewis?
When he was fantastic. I mean, where do you get, and this country has never seen it before and probably will never see it again, a state funeral with a political message, orchestrated in many ways by Jack, who was the politician right till the very end.
Should you, though? I mean, should you have a funeral? Is a time to remember a person, not remember a party. Stephen Lewis, who I don't think is such a good guy. I think Jack Layton was a decent guy. I'm not such a fan of Stephen Lewis. I think the pomposity and the arrogance was quite obvious there. But so you take advantage of decent people saying, sorry, you're gone, to throw politics down people's throats?
I think it was fantastic. It was a celebration of Jack's life. He was the consummate politician, a man of the people, and that's what came across. We brought together people from all walks of life, from all political parties. It was done in a way that was non-denominational, so everybody would feel welcome there.
Didn't see much Christianity up there.
Well, you didn't. You know, as I said, non-denominational.
Well, there was native spirituality with the feather and the bird.
There was all sorts of people from all walks of life, and that's the way Jack led his life. So what we saw was an outpouring of emotion from Canadians all across the spectrum. And I know you on the right just don't like that. You're a little bit ticked off about the fact that there was so much attention paid to an icon of the left, and I appreciate you don't like that.
I'm emotional. You've seen me be emotional. I'm emotional, for goodness sake. I'm sorry that Jack is gone. I thought it was an exploitation of his passing, though. Go ahead.
I totally agree, Michael. I think it was crass. I think it was exploitive. And I mean, you know, you talk about non-denominational. Well, we had the native spiritual leader. We had some Christianity. We had some...
What Christianity did we have?
Oh, well, Reverend Brent Hawkes was
That's a gay church. Well, the gay is more important than the church.
Well, of course it is.
In that phrase.
Why do you think he was chosen? We had Muslim scripture read. We had Jewish scripture read. Now, here's the thing. I mean, who mourns for the Scientologists and the Raelians? How come they weren't represented at this funeral?
You're just being facetious now.
Well, Michael, listen, if Jack Layton was Jewish, if Jack Layton was a Muslim, I would expect him to have a Jewish or a Muslim funeral. This whole idea that it's a Baskin-Robbins sermon, you know, a bit here, a bit there, I mean, that in itself is a political act, just like his death speech was, basically. Do
you think he wrote that letter?
No, well, we already know it was written by committee. The party president was involved, Olivia Chow was involved, and it was an incredibly political document, Michael. I mean, and especially when he says things that I found offensive as a Canadian about talking to his NDP stalwarts to fight the fight to restore Canada's good name in the world. You know what, Michael? I didn't know we lost our good name in the world. I mean, maybe the United Nations Security Council has a problem with Canada, but I take that as a badge of honor, given how the UN is these days. So everything about it was, and you know what, Michael? I don't know if I was the only one to pick up on a bit of perverse hypocrisy here, but when Jack Layton's casket was brought into Roy Thomson Hall, it was in a big Cadillac hearse, followed by 6 more Cadillac DTSs. These are big, American-made, 400 horsepower V8 cars. This is a man and his ilk who, for decades in Toronto, had a war on the car, said, you know, made Toronto one of the worst cities to drive around in.
Go ahead.
I mean, David is ever the clown, as he always was. He's always been on your previous shows.
Why do you say
I mean, that kind of a verbal diarrhea we just heard a few moments ago about a person that this whole country came out to celebrate his life. He united this country. He did what no other politician has been able to do in the last 4 decades, which was bring Quebec back into federalism, a monumental achievement. Besides all of the achievements he's had when he was at City Council, where he united large urban cities with small towns with a vision.
What vote did he get?
Sorry?
Surely the politician who got the greatest vote was Stephen Harper.
But that's not what we're talking about here, Michael.
He said united the country. He united the left. I give him that.
Harper did not unite Quebec. Harper actually tried several times to curry favour with Quebec, and he failed miserably. It took Jack Layton, with his message and his vision, to be able to appeal to the working class in many respects of Quebec.
But Sid,
and bring
I agree with you. He did amazingly well in Quebec, but you said unite the country. He didn't unite the country.
He has.
And Canada didn't come out for the funeral. Downtown Toronto came out for the funeral.
Listen, I was up in Ottawa, and they came out in huge numbers up in Ottawa. They came out in huge numbers in Toronto, and I know that the right like to say, oh, this was only just an Ottawa-Toronto outpouring of support, but in fact, I know for a fact that there were many vigils and outpourings of support in every one of our provinces.
Why didn't all these people vote for him, though?
Because well, they voted for him in magnificent numbers, far more so in the millions they voted for him.
Yeah, but he didn't win the election. An election before that, he did very badly. You were about to get rid of him before the last election.
I appreciate this, Michael, but he came from 3rd place into 2nd position, the official opposition.
Right. But you would agree that the party was about to get rid of him before the last election.
But don't try to diminish that.
No, I'm not.
And just base it all strictly on,
I respect him.
On how many votes did he get. You can't diminish the role that he's played in uniting this country.
Okay,
I know you don't like to think about that, but he did. He united
You'll
this
have more time when you come back. We'll do another segment. We might go to other subjects. There's a bit more to say, I think, as well about Jack Layton, if we're allowed to. Yeah, it's Sun News. Back in a few moments. See you soon. Later in the show, the politics of gay, the truth about the Middle East. But first, more of our midweek rumble. Welcome back to The Arena. You are in The Arena with Michael Coren on Sun News. Now, we have every Wednesday, at least we plan to, a dispute, a debate, a discussion of people of right and left-wing ideas who agree or disagree. Well, no, they disagree on various issues. There's more to say about Jack Layton, but let's move on to the issue of organised labour, because we have a major Labour leader here, perhaps the best-known Labour leader in Canada. Public service unions, public service workers having unions, withdrawing their labour. Should they be allowed to do that? Do we need these unions, David?
Absolutely not. I have no problem with private sector unions, and that what we've seen in the economy.
Do you mean that? Well, you're just saying that, really. You don't like unions at all, do you?
Wait a minute. Hear me out, Michael. No, I'm not a unionist, and I never want to belong to a union. But I mean, look at the auto sector since the economic meltdown. We've seen concessions, wage rollbacks, benefit rollbacks, because they realize if they don't change their tune, you know, the Detroit Three are out of business. Okay, the public sector union, that's a different kind of cat. Here you have, no matter how bad the economy gets, no matter what the world economic conditions are, they say, hey, simply raise taxes. It's this endless, bottomless pit to top up their 6, 7, 8% increase year over year, their benefit package. packages. And the thing is, Michael, it's our money. This is our money. This is what you have in Wisconsin going on. People are fed up with this entitlement that you are, go to this trough of taxpayer dollars and have this job for life. And by the way, what is the consequence if you do a bad job? Have you ever seen someone in a bureaucracy actually get fired? It's almost impossible. You basically have to get caught stealing, and even then it's not a slam dunk, Michael.
Comrade. Again, David's, he's full of cliches with respect to the public sector, and his facts are always completely wrong. Nobody in this country, private or public sector, have seen a wage increase of 6 or 7%, as he indicated, since the 1980s, when inflation was running at about 15%. The average wage increase for the public sector over the last numerous years, but certainly in the last year, has been clipping along about 1.7%, and the private sector at 2.2%. So public sector unions have moderated their demands at the bargaining table. At the same time, you have to take a look and say, okay, what is it that we do in the public sector? The public sector actually delivers services to Canadians. For example, those who work in hospitals, long-term care facilities, look after children with disabilities, and so on. That's who the public sector are.
So to turn around and say, you're right, they do. We always mention those.
To turn around and say that, you didn't interrupt him. Give me a second.
Well, I'm giving you lots of time, but they're the emotional.
You jump in only in me. You don't see you jumping in and criticising him. So be fair. If you want to be criticised, be fair who you criticise, right? And jump in.
He's got a point, David.
Yeah, so he has.
How about I jump in and interrupt
So he has. You can jump in any time. I'd love to debate you one-on-one.
Okay.
But the point that he's trying to make about public sector workers, they should have a right to the ability, like all workers in the workplace. Just because we're not living in Dickens' age right now, we shouldn't be prevented from workers coming together to say, we want to pool our resources to be able to negotiate with our employers, whether it be the hospital administration.
Dickens believed in slavery, actually.
Well, there you go. That's one of the reasons why we need trade unions. So he wants to take us back to this age where workers become servants once again. So you've got to be able to, just like corporations, be able to pool your resources.
I'm allowed to respond now, I believe. You mentioned hospital workers and those who work with handicapped children, and these are beautiful jobs and often beautiful people. Not always, frankly. There are nurses who don't always work so well, but these are the jobs that get to the heart and the gut. But there are other jobs, bureaucracy, repetition of work, redundant work. I mean, surely you would admit that there's public service workers out there who aren't really helping very much, but they're still drawing a wage.
Well, let's take an example. You've got this right-wing Neanderthal in this city, Ford.
Mayor of Toronto, Rob Ford.
Who's basically saying he got elected on, I'm going to find the gravy. The gravy train is going to stop, right? Yeah. He's been in there 6 months right now, and he can't find any gravy.
I could find a bit.
Because all these cliches all about, the unproductive public sector workers, we all know they exist and everything else. It's all just fancy.
I'm glad Sid is, coming full disclosure in terms of his personal, attacks with people, calling Rob Ford a right-wing
That's not calling Rob Ford. We're a national station.
Oh, yeah, but earlier you called me a clown and verbal diarrhea. You know what? This is just amazing. I mean, I'm not trying to bring this back to Jack Lane.
Isn't he that untruthful? Come on, David. You know it's truthful.
But Sid, we had Christy Blatchford of the National Post last week write a column questioning this whole idea of a state funeral and questioning what Jack Layton said in his will to Canadians, and the attacks on the left. And remember, what's that line? Love is better than anger. Isn't that one of the Laytonisms that everyone's quoting?
Okay, so I love you, David. I love you.
You're not going to be physically sick. Enough, please.
But the number of times Miss Blatchford was called a four-letter word that I cannot utter on this station, but rhymes with the word "but," was disgraceful. Well, Sid, you're acting surprised.
I am, yeah.
It's true.
I am.
It
may have happened, but I didn't hear this. But certainly,
you should see my emails. I mean, believe me, the language
didn't happen in the circles that I travel in. But I don't know what kind of circles you're traveling in.
So first of all, I don't know why you have to make things so personal that way. And secondly, you're talking about we only had a 1.7% increase, a 2.2% increase. Is the word decrease in a union's vocabulary? What about giving back? What about in this city? In Toronto, you have ticket takers at the TTC and subway booths making 6 figures. That's documented on the Sunshine. And I'm not dumping on anyone's job, but to make that kind of money,
let me get your line of logic here, your argument straight. So you're criticising me because you said I got too personal, and then as an example, you use Blatchford's article in the newspaper as somehow to supplement your argument. Didn't she get extremely personal about a man that just passed that this country is mourning?
Absolutely not.
And in the midst,
she was questioning the language
she didn't get
in
personal
his speech.
about the type of speech that he wrote, and she was saying how maudlin it was and
Sorry,
how
he
political
wrote, it was written by committee, we know that, right?
He's a dying man. It's 2 days before he died. For God's sakes, you know what I mean? He's not,
Full disclosure
he's
here,
not just
though,
at the
Shane,
running
okay?
a marathon. He's 2 days away from dying, and he gets some assistance from his wife and a couple of his trusted friends around him. Is that a crime? I didn't realise that was such a crime. And by the way, it was full disclosure. He didn't come out and say Jack personally wrote this letter himself, all on his own.
Okay.
He actually, full disclosure from the very beginning.
Last 10
that it was
seconds,
done
Menzies,
by a group of people helping him.
Well, once again, Michael, it's this whole idea of union entitlement. This is why the right-wing Neanderthal Rob Ford got to become mayor in Toronto. Respect for taxpayers. Your unions should start respecting us because we pay the piper, brother.
All right, gentlemen, be quiet, be quiet.
No, hang on a second.
No, I'm out. Listen, private sector job. I don't go to time. I'm unemployed. Back after this in the arena. Do not leave the arena. We have some startling comments about homosexuality, the decline of Arab television, and next, the brother of the former Israeli Prime Minister. Ehud Olmert was Prime Minister of Israel for 3 years. Frankly, I think his brother would have been way better at the job. Here he is, writer and academic Yossi Olmert joins us from North Carolina. Welcome to you, sir.
Thanks so much for inviting me, as usual.
I saw a bit of a grin when I mentioned that. Now, first question, really, the so-called Arab Spring. And we're meant to get very excited about this and say, isn't it wonderful, democracy and hugs, and everybody will be eating candy the whole time. But we have Egypt looking very volatile, a terrorist attack in the south of Israel. Syria, who knows what could happen, a dictatorial regime maybe replaced by another one. As an Israeli, are you optimistic about this new Arab democracy?
Well, I would divide my answer into two parts. The first would be to tell you that it is encouraging to see that there has been this outburst of popular feelings against totalitarian regimes in some Arab countries and against corruption, poverty, and all the rest of it. However, one has to bear in mind that the most popular, organized, and coherent political force in all those countries are Muslim fundamentalists, particularly the Muslim Brotherhood. So is the case in Egypt. And it may also be the same in Syria, even though for other reasons. Tunisia is a very particular case. And altogether, when you talk, therefore, about the Arab Spring, you have to bear in mind that while the former regimes were definitely not democratic, they were theocratic, we cannot be sure that the new regime will not be theocratic, even though from a different ideological direction.
Now, Mubarak, wherever he may have been or not been, he did maintain a peace treaty with Israel. I mean, Israelis went on vacation to parts of Egypt. There was trade, there were oil purchases. Now, I mean, surely you're not an optimist. If I was Israeli, I wouldn't go to Egypt at this point.
I'm not an optimist, but I would like not to be too pessimistic either, not because I want to be in a good place in the middle. It's simply because we need to understand that the current regime in Egypt is working under some constraints. That said, we cannot condone what is already happening in Egypt, which is, the burning of the Israeli flag, the removal of the Israeli flag from the embassy building, which is unprecedented in international relations, the demonstrations, the incitement, and all the rest of it. I think that the current regime, which is basically ruled by the military council, would like to maintain some kind of a relationship with Israel, and definitely they would not be interested in having a war with Israel. But they've lost control, rather, in the Sinai Peninsula, or at least parts of it, and that explains what happened a few days ago. And according to the most recent information that I have, at least, there may be a complicity, if not even actual participation on the part of Egyptian soldiers in the attack on Israel. So that's very, very, very serious. And by the way, Michael, just today I understand that the one and only Jimmy Carter, and I'm saying it cynically, of course, he said in an interview in an Israeli newspaper, in Haaretz, that he's very afraid that the peace treaty with Egypt would be abrogated. Of course, he blamed Israel for that, but the fact of the matter is that if, God forbid, and I say God forbid, this peace treaty would be abrogated, the entire future of the Middle East will be very, very bleak.
Well, I mean, he has a point. I lost my hair a few years ago, and I do blame international Zionism for that. So Jimmy Carter's probably right. Let's talk about Syria, though, because Syria, like, it doesn't
you
have to
lose your sense of humor, Michael. That's good.
Hey, without that, what future do we have? Syria, Assad Jr., his father was a vicious dictator. He is the same. But again, he was frightened of Israel, for goodness sake. He wasn't going to do too much. He probably will be toppled. A new regime. They'll probably try and unify that very diverse country on getting back the Golan Heights. Israel's involved immediately.
Well, again, you know, like father, like son, obviously, Bashar Assad has never been what people thought that he would be, like a reformer. That sounds like a bad joke today. It was a bad joke when they said it. But the fact of the matter is that the Syrian situation may be somewhat different. Don't forget that the biggest ally of the current regime and the previous regime, I mean the Hafez Assad regime, are the Iranians. And in Syria, the problem is sectarian between Sunni Muslims and Alawites, you know, that are close to the Shia Islam. So if the regime in Syria will be brought down, and that is going to happen, just a question of time, the new regime in Syria, while not being pro-Israel, I mean, don't even entertain any hope about that, they will still not necessarily be in the pocket of the Iranians, or rather, they will not be in the pocket of the Iranians, and that will also affect Hezbollah in Lebanon. So it's a very complicated situation, but Assad is still there, and I would give him few more months, not more than that. The regime will be brought down there.
Is Libya at all relevant, at all pertinent to the Israeli situation?
Well, not really in a direct way, but again, if the Libyan regime that will be established now, and when it is going to be established, will be a fundamentalist and pro-Islamic one, and the signs are that there is going to be a strong influence of fundamentalist forces there, that will not be good to stability altogether in Northern Africa and in the rest of the Middle East. And anything that is undermining stability in the Middle East, in the end of the day, is not good for Israel, because those elements that are causing the instability are usually more militant and radical.
Country that is not Arabic and was one of your major allies in the Islamic world, well, you didn't have many of them. Turkey, of course, there's a different leadership now. The flotillas of the ship of fools, people going to Gaza to bring in goodness knows what, obviously arms half the time. They're still demanding an apology. There's an ambiguity there. Have you said sorry? Have you not? Will you not? Will you have an alliance with Israel, have an alliance with Turkey in 1 year, in 2 years' time?
Well, I'll be perfectly blunt with you, Michael. If I thought that an apology to Turkey, even though I don't think that we need to apologize, but say if I saw that an apology would rectify the relationship with Turkey and bring them back to what they used to be, I would go along with it. You know, what is an apology when you compare it to the overall structure of the relationship that we used to have with Turkey? The problem is that many people in Israel, while they consider the pros and cons of an apology, are almost certain, and I would go along with that, that this government in Turkey does not really want to restore the relationship with Israel or to bring them back to what they used to be. And that's why apologizing to this regime might be used against us, because then Mr. Erdogan will be able to go around in the Middle East like this Arab hero, you know, the Abu Ali, and claim that he put the Israelis on their knees. So I wonder whether we should do that, unless the Turks would be willing to restore relationship to what they used to be, and that I doubt very much.
Yeah. A pleasure. Please come back on the show, and thank you so very much indeed.
Always a pleasure, Michael. Take good care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
When we return, why Arab media fails and fails, and some startling comments about being or not being gay. The gay lifestyle, the gay community, being gay. What is homosexuality and can you leave it? I really don't know the answers to this. Alan Yoshioka has many of the answers, I suppose. Welcome to you.
Thank you, Michael.
You know, I find it very easy to interview politicians and authors, and mainly they're boring anyway. But this is a very personal story. And so if the questions I ask, if the language is, it won't be offensive, I hope, but if it's inappropriate or clumsy, please forgive me. Were you gay? Are you gay? You're a married man. You're married to a beautiful woman. Are you still gay?
I would not say so. I still have some homosexual inclinations, but those have receded to a very great degree, and I'm very happily married. I love my wife. I love being married.
She can't stand you, by the way. I just asked.
Oh, okay. Thank you for clarifying.
But that's a wonderful answer, because you hear sometimes, particularly, and I'm not here to criticize them, but in the States, perhaps maybe some evangelical activists saying, become a Christian, then you're no longer gay, and that seemed rather simplistic to me. Sexuality is quite profound.
It's pretty deeply rooted in the personality.
Yeah.
We don't believe in kind of all or nothing solutions, and if I said, well, I'm just completely fixed, then I'd be setting myself up for a fall. And,
yeah.
I think, you know, we have to be realistic about, you know, any married man is going to be tempted by somebody who's not his wife. I mean, that's something you deal with.
There's a long pause developing here. I wouldn't know what you meant by that. Now, how long you were active in the gay community?
I was active in the gay community for more than 15 years.
So that when I say active, I politically active, physically active? Politically active,
sexually active.
Right.
Sexually active from 1983.
Right. Until
the end of 1999.
And since then, you haven't been, but the temptations have not completely evaporated.
Not completely, but I went for, you know, for many years without gay sex before even my wife came along, right? So I was prepared to, you know, do whatever it took.
Now, you know this far better than I do. There are many in the gay community who would say, well, actually, you never were gay, or this is temporary, and you will go back to the gay lifestyle.
Well, I would never go back. Nothing could induce me to go back, because I just know how much happier I am now than in the old days.
Why?
Companionship, peace of mind, real intimacy. I mean, you get intimacy from a one-night stand, but it's a kind of a fake, you know, instant intimacy. To really know somebody and be known, to love and be loved. I mean, there's no substitute for that. And what I was attached to was, you know, was kind of a fake.
Yes, but again, there are gay people who would say that that's true, but you could have intimacy and love and a long-term commitment with someone of the same gender.
Well, I mean, I had a long-term relationship, lived with a man for a number of years, carried on a long-distance relationship with him for a while as well. It's not the same. And
in what way?
Well, I just I wasn't at peace in the same way as I am now, and ultimately that relationship dissolved, and you know, we're still friends.
The whole, not the whole, but much of the thrust of contemporary arts and culture, entertainment and media is emphasizing, when it comes to sexuality, that as long as consent is involved, nothing is wrong, and there is complete equality between gay lifestyle and heterosexual lifestyle.
That's a very common view, and I don't think it really holds up. I found that I was not happy in the lifestyle, and the thought of actually changing was quite repellent to me. There was a time when I was seeking a counselor, and I asked a friend for a referral, and I said, it must be somebody who's not going to try to turn me straight. You know, I mean, the thought of being, you know, made ex-gay was utterly horrifying, and I had a huge fight with my parents about it. I really believed, you can't do it. It's a distortion of who I really am to try to make me something else. I was very firmly attached to a gay identity, and
You can make a decision, you can be what you are and be completely autonomous and not try to influence other people, but do you try to influence others? I mean, what would you say to people who claim to be very happy as gay men or women? Would you tell them that there should be change, there could be change?
I certainly wouldn't impose therapy on anybody. I mean, we have to recognize a degree of autonomy. At the same time, I would say, I mean, let's be clear. There are people who are in the gay community who continue to be friends, and by and large, I don't get into debates with them. No. They know where I stand. They know I still love them, and we have other things that we have in common that we can talk about.
Of course.
Relatively straightforwardly. To just a random member of the gay community, I would say I have discovered something far more satisfying than I ever dreamed was possible.
That makes you, at best today, an eccentric, at worst almost a heretic, isn't it?
Yeah, there are people who think I'm kind of kooky.
Has it ever been extremely uncomfortable, if not dangerous?
Not dangerous, but very uncomfortable. I mean, there are friendships that have been severed because my friends didn't like the way I was going, and that's sad. I really wish that we could maintain a friendship, a relationship.
I find your moderation and your gentleness incredibly impressive and compelling, and really I thank you so very much. Thank you.
Well, it's by the grace of God, really.
Well, a modest man as ever, Alan Yoshoka, thank you. And again, we're not doing this interview to preach to people or even to try to convert people. It's an experience. You are as unique and qualified a Canadian as any number of those people from the gay community who seem to fill other television stations over and over again.
Yeah.
Thank you,
All right.
Thank you so
Michael.
much. Pleasure. Next in the arena, the decline and the fall of Arab journalism. Danger time, we hand the power over to you. Never a good thing to do. No, we believe in listening to your point of view. Emails, we had the debut of the show last night. I received about 130, 140 emails to date, and the vast majority were lovely. I expected more abuse and death threats. I think I got one death threat, but generally people seem to really enjoy the show. Anyway, here's a selection. This is from August Murphy King, a rather intriguing name. The Bigot and Coulter will be right at home on the Bigot Michael Coren's show. Good point. Sophisticated. Like to respond with more time, but I have to get going because I've got the gay handicapped gypsy bar mitzvah to drive to with Anne, but more later. This is from Stuart Lawton in Oakville, Ontario. Great opening monologue in block capitals, Stuart, so you must really mean it. Thank you very much for that. Dee Dee, there is an email address here. We may have handed it over to someone. How dare you show a cartoon of Muhammad, you pig monkey? What is a pig monkey? Killing in the name of truth is not murder, but justice. Are you implying that you're going to come and get this pig monkey? James Duggan, wow! Amazing debut for the arena with Michael Coren. Great job, Mr. Coren. Thank you very much for that. I do appreciate it. Once again, we put the bad ones in, but there weren't too many bad ones so far. Gary McDonald, I want to congratulate you on your new program. I have to admit, I'm someone you might consider a lefty, but I regularly watched you on your last show. I've always enjoyed how you challenge my beliefs and political views. I hope you'll keep inviting people from across the political spectrum to keep the debate lively and well-informed. Well, you just saw we had the debate. Sid Ryan and David Menzies, and all sorts of people will be on who don't always have the standard conservative view. I'm not into that sort of thing. Randy Mulder, congratulations, Michael. Great start. Be strong and of good courage. Great words to Joshua. They seem appropriate now. Thank you so very much indeed for that. Now, we have mentioned to you the decline of Arab journalism, which I regret because we need a free press. Let's have a look at what we meant by that. Here she is, talking about the stock market, I think, and then suddenly, oh no. Will she work again? Maybe this time she won't do that. Second time lucky? Is it going to happen? Is it? Yeah. And just once more, because on a third occasion, maybe. Here we go. 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh! Now, enough. No more rejoicing in this woman's demise. Now, that's it. You've seen the show. Want to know in particular what you think of the debate between Sid Ryan and David Menzies, because we intend to have that every Wednesday, but if you don't like it, well, get rid of it, OK? So let us know what you think. Tell your friends and family and your enemies all about The Arena on Sun News, The Arena with Michael Coren, and email us. You can go to my blog and Facebook and email Sun News directly and tell us what you think. Until tomorrow, when there's a great show planned, all I can say to you really is take care, God bless, and goodbye.